I'm bored. Let's watch Eric and Az. All right, so as much as I hate watching these two guys together, there's some good news about this video. Number one, it's very short. It's like 2 minutes and 25 seconds. So it's a short video, so that's good. Secondly, as I was jumping through it, I realized that Eric is talking the majority of this video, which is not normally the case with clips of Eric and Az. So happy to know that Az is not talking as much, because if I have to suffer through one of the two of them, I'm gonna choose Eric. And that's, my bar is very low there, so that's not really a compliment. But in this video, they're talking about the election and wokeness and Hollywood and this dream they have, I guess, of silencing free speech and freedom of expression through government means. I know that's a pretty broad, like, we could sit around and have like a nuanced conversation about what that means. But ultimately, I truly believe, I'm saying I believe this, that these guys would advocate for actual, like, free speech suppression. They seem to imply that they would be okay if the government had some sort of control over things like movies, TV shows, video games, things that are art that I believe should not be censored by any governments anywhere. I think if you make a video game and you release it to the world, it should be the same in every country. You shouldn't have to change it because the government has rules against art. I don't believe that. I'm very big on like anti-censorship in that regard. But these guys, and when I say these guys, I don't mean specifically these two, but people in this space, like your Geeks and Gamers, your Fandom Menace Fellowship guys, like this community, always seem to circle the drain when it comes to like free speech and free expression. So we're gonna watch this video. I wanna talk about this. I wanna talk a bit about cancel culture and sort of just get it out there because I believe it's important, and how my stances are changing on this opinion of canceling people or silencing people or censoring people. My opinion is starting to change a little bit on that, and I'm going to explain why as we go through this video.
Jacob Joseph with a 20 says, thanks for you both and all that you, Eric. You've often said the pendulum is still swinging towards woke, just not as quickly. Do you think that with the election of Trump that the pendulum is not swinging the other way?
Okay, so before we let him answer, I want to say that it is very important that these guys always are the victors and the victims. Both of those things are happening simultaneously, meaning that they are being oppressed by a majority of people, and that wokeness is so large and so controlling, it's taking over everything, and they are being held down by a majority of people. But also they are the majority of people, and that not everybody wants wokeness, so somehow they're also winning. So they're winning and they're losing at the same time. And you will notice in any regard to this, and I've been right about this every single time, that no matter how much they get of something, they will continue to ask for more, especially from their supporters, because they need their supporters to have purpose. They cannot continue to survive in this ecosystem without generating purpose for the people that follow them. And in regards to this stuff, the purpose still needs to be Hollywood is bad and we need to go against Hollywood. The gaming industry is bad, we need to go against the gaming industry. So even if they had people in positions that were totally on board with everything that they believe in, they would still find some way to argue that that's not the case. So let's listen to what Eric has to say.
I think there's two ways to answer that. You always got to look at it from the general populace and how they either reject something or embrace something, as well as the shot callers and how they approach it. I think that distinction is important. I don't believe that the shot callers, the mega corporations, the guys that are largely in control of, for example, these various entertainment sectors, the academia, I think they are going to double, triple, and quadruple down on the garbage that they've been pumping out.
Okay, so the follow-up on that, Eric, would be why? Why would they do that? So now you have a situation where the country, if we were to believe that everything was done fairly and there was no shenanigans happening, that the country, by a margin, voted for someone who is more conservative as president, meaning that that would suggest that the consumers existing in the United States, if it's not for things like the electoral colleges or shenanigans, that the majority of people in the United States are looking for something other than that. So why would, and you have to think about this logically, why would the people making these movies, making the TV shows, making these games, continue to make things appealing to an audience that is less than, if you're going to believe all this, less than the majority of this country, and continue to try and make money that way? Why would they do that? Unless they do believe there is value in making that kind of content. And then you would have to ask, is the value in the money they're making? Or would you argue that they actually care about the values of their employees? They care about the values of their consumers? It's a long, drawn out response that he's not going to give an answer to. And the reason why is he doesn't need to really like sort of rationalize, explain, or break down any of his opinions on that. All he needs to do is say, I don't think that these corporations are going to stop making woke stuff. That's all he needs to say. It is like shorthand for everything out there when it comes to these guys' followers. So that is his first statement. Now he's going to talk about the cultural shift here, and I'm curious to see what he says.
I do believe that said that there is at least a consideration to reject it more than it has been in years past. I think the election per se is not, okay, it's going to do that. No, the election is the lagging indicator. That shows you that, yes, there may be more people rejecting something a lot more than what they had been in the past.
See, he can't even get it together. He's like just stumbling through words. Because if he were to admit that progress was made on behalf of the community that he supports, which, by the way, Az is an American. He doesn't live in America. He has no dog in the fight in the political landscape of America, really. I mean, yes, there are politics do expand outside the United States, but Az doesn't have like a vote or a say in it. So like the idea that he represents American people is really weird. Eric is also a libertarian, so the fact that he seems to align himself with conservatives in this regard, instead of pushing for a libertarian candidate or someone that expresses the values of the libertarian party's core views, that's also kind of weird. But it's not weird to me. I'm saying that in a way where it's like, it is weird in the sense that why doesn't he just come out as a conservative and stop pretending that the libertarian stance is the one that holds him together? So again, we have to do this in the response to his answer here is they have to be winning, but they also have to be losing at the same time. That's why he's giving two different answers. So he's saying from one standpoint, yes, it is shifting and that I think there's progress happening, but we're still going to be oppressed because I need to make money in this culture war garbage and stuff like that. Also, he's bringing into question the idea of government overreach and should the government be able to come in and force those changes? And he's not saying it, but I believe those are the ideas that have been floated around in his community. If you go through and you watch some of the live streams, some of the conversations that happen, and he might even get into it here. Let's see where he goes. We only have a little bit left to watch.
That said, don't get confused or don't couple that with, oh, well, they're going to wake up and change as far as like, I don't know, video games companies are now going to start, they're going to fire all the DEI.
No,
it's just not going to happen. That's different. So
there we go. So now he's saying that he doesn't believe they will fire all of the DEI, which, to be fair, not all gaming companies exist in the United States. So I don't even know if that would be possible in that regard. But it brings into question, would he, and this would be my next thought on this, would you advocate for a government censorship of gaming companies and of movie studios and TV shows to get rid of DEI initiatives? Would you advocate for that? And based on my opinion of Eric and my viewing of Eric's content, I believe that Eric would support some sort of government bill or even law that would go after companies that have DEI initiatives to get rid of them. I believe he would. Because the extremism in this community, this sector of social media and content creators has grown to the point where it's almost not even worth playing the games anymore. And we talked about like Nerdrotic and Critical Drinker and those guys and how they like sort of play the game. They don't want to scare too many people away with extremism. Whereas when it comes to Eric here and a lot of these channels that are starting to really suffer with subscribers and views and things, they have nothing left to lose. So the extremism and the extreme point of views are just going to get more and more outrageous. And a lot of that has been emboldened by the fact that you had a person running for president that just continuously said lie after lie after lie after lie and still got elected. And so now they feel like they can also do the same thing. At least for the time being. We'll see what happens with that.
The audience is there. And they may be changing their views, but I don't think that the status quo is changing. And I'm not saying that as a black pill. I'm saying that as a white pill, because I personally believe that if we're going to get on the other side of that, it's going to happen by way of like smaller studios, smaller companies that aren't attached to these mega corporations.
So this is him. Everything with Eric is an advertisement for what he does. Everything. So at the end of the question, he's like, these smaller studios, these smaller companies. You mean like Ripaverse? You mean like your company? the one that you're trying to push all of this garbage stuff out on, these garbage comic books, these garbage t-shirts, these garbage posters and things, that company, the one where you're just, it's like the McDonald's of content. Yeah, that's not it, man. Like that's not, if it, companies, you talked about this in one of your videos, companies get gobbled up. Like companies like yours, when they get to a certain size, there's no elbow room in the market for that. So in order for your company to be large enough to be a player, you would have to align yourself with some of these mega corporations. It's just the reality of it. And you say you'll never do that. We'll see if that happens. I have my thoughts and opinions on that. Let's finish up the video.
Yes. So, and it may be big in like as far as the scale of those, but they're not going to be attached to, again, some mega corporate entity. That's where I'm at.
So, and I believe that's the end of the video. This is a Katie Did clip. If you want to go watch it, head over to Katie Did's clip channel, give it a watch. But I want to talk a little bit about all of this in general before we wrap this up. So the reality is now at this point, based on what we're seeing from a lot of people in the conservative space on the fandom side, is they're skating this idea of like what the government could do to sort of bring about change by use of government power. That's actual free speech. And I'm advocating, or have advocated for years, that I believe that everyone should be able to make something in the market and see what the market thinks of it. That's how I've always felt. But even people like Hypnotic, there's a chat with Hypnotic and Mike Hollow that I watched. I think there was like 2 or 3 different things with Hypnotic and some people talking. I can't remember. It was probably Mike Hollow, where they talked about the idea of cancellation, like canceling people, getting rid of things that we don't like, and whether or not it's actually just the cancellation of a person or a project, or if it's cancel culture, because the idea of cancel culture is different from like canceling an individual person. And I think that's some of the nuance that gets lost with these guys. And Hypnotic and Mike Hollow agreed in that conversation that there are things that people could be canceled for. And that's completely different from government censorship, government overreach into the arts and entertainment spaces. I will never advocate for that. You will never ever find a time where I think the government should go in to creative spaces and tell people they're not allowed to do something. For example, that big fallacy story about Black Panther, the poster getting censored in China by covering up a black man's face, which was debunked. That is the kind of censorship that I don't want to see. I don't think that that's something that should happen. I don't think that should happen. I don't think that gay scenes should be cut out of movies. I think that's stupid. I think cultural stuff that's relevant, if it gets released worldwide, it should be the same everywhere you go, except for the, like, obviously translations or dubbing so that we understand what's being said if we don't speak the language. But outside of that, I think it should all be the same. So this idea that the government coming in and getting rid of woke is like a play for censorship. And I'll never support that. And Eric here, just like everybody else in this space, even when they get everything that they've asked for, even if everything they asked for happened, they would still be the victims of something, because with them, there's always going to be some sort of victim narrative.